Okay, hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. Welcome back to Tower Defense Games. So there's a bit of a problem, which I've mentioned a few times in the past, and we're going to deal with it today. And that is that if you go into level 1, you can build towers and stuff just fine. However, if you were to quit the title and if you were to go into, for example, level 2, you cannot build towers just fine anywhere. The collision information is pretty much like the entire map is non-collidable, is non-buildable rather. And that's because the system that I had in place originally for figuring out where stuff could be built basically fell apart in front of my eyes. And today I'm going to throw all that away and implement a new system for figuring out where stuff can be created. That is going to take the form of basically turning the map into a paint canvas and just painting solid versus non-solid area. And that's probably going to be the focus of the entire video. I may go and do more than that if there's time at the end, if that doesn't end up taking too long, but we'll see. So the first thing that I'm going to do is in the editor, I need to find the editor. So the first thing that I'm going to do is in the editor, which is, I believe, over somewhere down here. This is the gameplay update portion of the update loop in the editor. No, that's the pause menu. Where's the editor? The editor is down here. I can, let's say, push a button and go into editor collision mode. So I will create something similar to editor path mode. And where is this defined for one? Editor collision mode. And if I push a button, I can go into that mode. Let's say, which buttons are already taken? Which function keys are already taken? I believe F4 and F5 are... F4, F5, F6 are taken for, like, model selection. F7... We'll say F7 can be collision painting mode. And to do that, that's going to look an awful lot like what we have before. VK-F7 editor collision mode is going to be the opposite of editor collision mode. I will also set this to false, and when you go into path mode, collision mode is going to be set to false. When you go into collision mode, path mode is going to be set to false. At this point, the separate editor modes themselves could probably be another state, but I'm fine with the editor code being a little bit messy because I would like to get this done before never. So if you're in editor path mode, you are going to do some stuff. If editor collision mode else. All right, so this is where all the interesting stuff is going to happen. Let's see. If I were to do this now, nothing of particular interest would really happen. I don't think anything would actually happen at all. Let's see. I'm going to have to do a little bit more initial setup. F4, F5 is taken. I need to... Okay. So this is just going to allow me to draw each of these on their own line, and I won't have to manually update positions. All right, that's just something that annoyed me. I'm surprised I didn't do that earlier, honestly. But as I was saying, if I were to go, and you can see the commands are lined up properly now. If I were to go F7 into editor collision mode, nothing's going to happen, and that's honestly fine. I would like a few things to happen. One is that the UI should change so that the developer knows that they are in editor collision mode. Let's see. Click to spawn or select a path node. Instead of doing that, I can say click to paint collision information. So as I said, we're going to be basically creating a paint canvas. Left click to paint collision information, right click to clear collision information. I'm still doing it. I'm still accidentally opening the start page. And that's going to be our editor mode. If I were to run the game now, we can see that it works. So this is going to take over the camera a little bit. In the camera render method, I'm going to, I think, want to do a little bit of a special code, and that is going to be checking to see if we are in editor render and editor collision mode. If that is the case, I can say if game.editor collision mode, we can do one thing, else we can just do the standard camera behavior. We can set the camera projections in the usual ways. The view matrix for the camera in editor collision mode is going to be something akin to, oh, what do I want this to be? Matrix build look at. We're going to be looking straight down. X from can be room width divided by 2, room height divided by 2. I have a band-aid on my finger because I sliced it up cutting vegetables a few days ago, and that's making it hard for me to type on the certain letters on my keyboard. The Z is going to be somewhere arbitrarily high in the air. Let's make this like 10,000 or something. 1,000, that's probably fine, right? 2,000. X2 is going to be room width divided by 2. Room height divided by 2. Like, I have to use the spacebar with a different finger other than the thumb on my left hand. Because the band-aid's in the way and I can't really push it like that. And also I don't want to make the cut on my finger burst open again because that would be very annoying. So I frequently miss the spacebar. Z2 is going to be 0. That needs to be a comma. Okay, Z2 is 0. X up is going to be 0. Y up is going to be -1. And Z up is going to be 0. Camera set proj map. Let's leave that alone for now. We should see that when we are in collision mode, we have a mismatched parentheses, so we cannot go into editor collision mode yet. Now we can. We should see when we go into editor collision mode that we are going to have a bird's eye view of the map. And that is going to look something like this. Given our projection matrix, which is a perspective camera, so things that are farther away from the camera appear to be smaller. And things that are closer to the camera appear to be bigger. To rectify that, matrix build projection ortho is what I'm looking for. The width can be, I want to say this has to be room height divided by 2 and room width divided by 2. I want to say it's really like a half width and height, although I'm not 100% sure on that. Z near can be 1, Z far can be 2,000. I'll make this like 3,000. It doesn't really matter where the clipping planes are as long as everything that's in the world is visible, because the camera will never be moving. F6 did not mean to hit the search button. F7. Okay. It looks like we are actually looking at the world, and certain planes are not being rendered. Are we looking at the bottom of the world? Do I want to make this like right on cue? Because like when I was talking about how my thumb is in a band-aid, I was like whacking it on the keyboard, and now I think I might have like agitated it again. Way to go, me. Okay, so this looks like I'm gonna need to not divide this by 2. Alright, I don't remember how the camera matrices work. I just type in numbers until it looks good, and then I forget about it, and then the next time I have to do it all over again from scratch. Okay, start the game, the campsite, or any of them really. And this is our map. Okay, so we have a bird's eye view. We are looking down. We can actually see certain faces are like not there, like the faces on the back. One, this is flipped upside down. Can I not make it not flipped upside down? Y up should be -1. That should be correct. Okay, here we go. I guess I can always, all I did was invert the Y up. So now positive Y is up, and then clearly that's not the case, because like if I were to label on the screen where the axes are, it would be this. But regardless, we can have collision editor mode. I'm going to make that a commit. Added collision editor mode. Let's see. So we're going to paint onto a surface. Then we're going to when we finish, we're going to convert the surface to a to just a regular buffer and save that. This should also have the added benefit that loading the game will be slightly faster, because we don't have to any longer decode the DS grid that previously represented collision. We'll just be dealing with straight buffers. But let's see. So when I go into editor collision mode, where is VKF7? We're going to say collision surface is going to equal surface create. The width can be, honestly, room width divided by 4, room height divided by 4. That can be the size. I can first, if we're exiting collision mode, we can surface free this so that we don't have it sitting around in memory. And we're also going to be converting the surface to a data buffer. But we'll get to that later. Next, let me go into where is the update. If we are in editor collision mode, we can check to see if the surface exists, and if it doesn't, we'll recreate it. If not, surface exists, collision surface, then we'll just recreate this. And to know I'm not really initializing this variable anywhere externally, I really probably should, but I'm not going to worry about it here because it's only ever going to be needed if you're in editor collision mode. So we can just check to see if the surface exists, and then draw surface sets target. When we're done, surface resets target. And while we're just here to check to see if it works or not, draw clear C white. That does not take a second parameter. So next, I can run this. It'll probably not crash, but we won't see any indication that anything's actually happening. So I will, in the draw GUI event, I will draw the collision surface on the GUI, so that we can actually see it and like overlay it on top of the screen. This is actually not going to work. Okay. Oh. Hang on. All right, the order of operations here is a little bit weird. So you only want to free the surface once you exit collision mode, and not when you enter it for the first time. Much better. So nothing visibly has changed. I guess it's a good thing that I ran the game so that I can catch that error now versus when we're farther in. In the draw GUI event or method or whatever it is, if game mode dot editor, if editor collision mode, we can say if surface exists collision surface, then we can draw surface stretched extended. The reason for a draw surface stretched is so that we can say collision surface x equals 0, y equals 0. The width is going to be window get width, height is going to be window get height. This is so that it fills the entire screen, because it's not going to be the entire screen, because that'll be a resolution that we really don't need as far as collision goes on the game map for building towers. Color is going to be C underscore white, and alpha is going to be 0.5. That way, even if it's completely solid, we can still see what's underneath. Tab F7, here we go. Okay, so even though the surface is completely filled in, we can still see some of what's underneath. And that is going to allow us to do some things. That's going to be the collision editor painting surface, and that is going to be in here. No. in here. We're going to, when we set the target to this, instead of just clearing it to a color, we can say if keyboard, actually no, if mouse check button MB left, we can draw, let's just say draw circle color at position window mouse get X, window mouse get Y, a radius of, let's say, 4, a color of C white, an inner color of C white, and an outline only of false, so we want a filled circle. This is not quite going to be what we want. We are going to need to convert mouse coordinates from the screen coordinates to the surface coordinates, which honestly will not be that difficult. If I were to go into surface mode, if I were to click the mouse button, nothing is going to happen. Okay. Why is nothing happening? Do I have a funny shader set or anything like that? If I were to run this in actual debug mode and pause the game there and look at the surface, what would happen? What would I see? Yes. Allow the debugger access through the firewall. I'm just going to drag the mouse cursor around a little bit and let me pause the game so I can look at the surfaces. Graphics, textures, surfaces, and let's reload these. Okay, so nothing's being drawn there. I would like to know why nothing is being drawn there. Alpha and surfaces can be really annoying sometimes. Okay, so one, I chickened out of bad code and just defined this collision surface to -1 in the constructor, so that we it's a variable that's going to exist. It just won't always have a surface assigned to it. I also did not allocate the surface when you first go into when you hit the F7 key in the update method. I'm just checking to see if the surface exists here right here in the draw GUI event. Again, probably not a good idea. Probably don't care. So surfaces and alpha suck. This is how I was expecting it to go wrong. So if you see where my mouse cursor is and where I'm actually drawing, you'll see that the position of the of where I'm drawing is not like lined up with the mouse cursor. I would like the position of where I'm drawing to be lined up with the mouse cursor. This has to do with the fact that the surface is not the same size as the screen. So if I just draw a circle at the mouse's X and Y, we are going to have that scaled up. Let's see. The problem is that I was drawing on the surface, but the alpha was just 0. Surfaces and alpha suck. That's not something that you really have to deal with when you're just dealing with the application surface or when you're otherwise drawing something to directly to the frame buffer. But when you're dealing with surfaces and if you have any sort of transparency, you probably would like to clear it to a color first so that it has alpha, and so that you're not just drawing pixels with a color but 0 transparency. I've dealt with that by just converting filling the entire screen with black on the creation of the surface, and then we'll be drawing white or drawing black depending on if you're clicking on it. So first, let us convert the mouse's X to surface coordinates. Let's see, var xx is going to equal window mouse gets X divided by window get width multiplied by surface get width collision surface. And that's going to be our X coordinate of the mouse. Y is going to be very, very similar. Window mouse get Y, window gets height, and surface gets height. And I can define these outside of that if statement because I will be using it again. Now, instead of just drawing a circle at that position, we can draw a circle at that particular X and Y. And if I were to instead click the right mouse button, like this, and be right, instead of drawing a circle of color white, I can draw a circle of color black. And that is going to be the area where you, in fact, can build. Okay, let us go into debug mode. Let us go into this mode, and this should allow us to, we can now mark out, and we can erase. We can mark out spaces where we can build towers. Okay, I think that's good. it may be worth implementing some sort of flood fill so that I don't have to spend a significant amount of time like drawing lines here, but nah, that might be a bit overkill. So let me increase the radius from 4 to 6 of our brush as soon as I have something that's reasonably satisfactory for painting in. And this is by no means an advanced painting application, but once I have something that's reasonably satisfactory, I will add code to save this to the data file. And would it be easier if I like whipped out my drawing tablet pen for this? Maybe. See if I can I go around the rocks? All right. I'm thinking, one, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to draw circle color, let's say, see aqua, something a little bit bright, and to just have a the outline of the circle. That way the player can see, the designer really can see where they're about to draw. Additionally, the radius of the pen, in some situations, I'm seeing quite clearly now, it would be a good idea to have a larger or smaller pen radius. So if I were to say, just define a static variable, which is basically a variable that's going to be local to this piece of code. So if I were to define this static collision brush radius equals 4, we can use this as the radius of the circle instead of a hard-coded 6, and then we can increase or decrease that. We can say if mouse wheel up collision brush radius is going to shrink, so it'll be the max of, let's say, a radius of like 2 and collision brush radius minus 1. And if we mouse wheel down, collision brush radius is going to be min of, let's say, 10 and the radius plus 1. And that will allow us to increase or decrease our pen size. Like so. Ooh, that's okay. Yeah, that's part of the surface. I do not want that to be part of the surface. Anyway, if I were to scroll up, I can increase the decrease rather than the pen size. If I mouse wheel down, I can increase it. Let us perhaps draw this Cayenne circle outside of the collision surface target, and that way it won't be like preserved in every single frame. Okay, I mess that up constantly when I'm drawing to surfaces. Alright, I would like that to be just in regular screen space then. And the radius is going to have to be multiplied by the scale of window get width divided by window get height. Surface get width. Window get width and window get height are a habit. Okay, that should draw the same shape, the same circle of the same radius in the location of the mouse cursor, at the correct size in the correct location. All right, here we go. If I were to click, we can see we're drawn. If I were to mouse wheel up, we can see that the circle is getting bigger, down, bigger and smaller. One of those. Down makes it smaller. No, I cannot get this right. Scrolling down makes the circle smaller. Oh my god, what's wrong with me? Scrolling down makes it bigger. Scrolling up makes it smaller. I don't know my ups and downs. This is distressing. Okay, that is a task. So we can now say implemented the collision painting surface. And now the only thing that's really left for me to do is one to actually do the job of painting the collision area, which is probably going to take a while, and I'm probably just going to like not do it now, and I'll probably just record myself doing it like later tonight or something, and then speed it up in editing so that you don't have to sit here for an hour watching me do it. And more importantly, before I do that, I need to actually convert the surface to a buffer when you exit the mode. Where is the okay. Where is the map's collision data? I believe that's a DS grid. If I were to look inside the... Okay, so it's collision grid. Alright, fused.collision. The collision grid is, I believe, when you just, like, the stuff that's dynamic, like when you place towers and whatnot. And the fused grid is stuff that's baked into the level. Okay. Let me think about how I want to engineer this. So instead of making this a DS grid, I can say this is going to be... How about -1? Just to initialize it. When we're in here, first I'm going to say var, and this is just going to be a straight buffer converted from the surface. Surface buffer is going to equal buffer create. It needs to have a certain size, which is going to be surface get width collision surface times surface get height times 4. The type can be buffer fixed and buffer fixed, and the alignment can be 1. Could make it 4. I'm just going to make it 1. Then, once we're done, buffer delete surface buffer. In the middle, buffer get surface, I believe is what we want. Buffer get surface. The buffer is going to be surface buffer. The surface is going to be collision surface, and the offset is going to be 0. And this is a buffer get surface is a handy function that copies the contents of a surface to a buffer. There's also buffer set surface, which does the opposite. It is the opposite, right? Buffer set surface is for obtaining, write the information from a buffer to a surface. Yeah, okay. Anyway, we'll be using that in reverse at some other point in time. Next, we need to the actual buffer contents for collision is, I mean, it could just be surface buffer, but that's going to be 4 times bigger than it needs to be, and that might be a bit of a lot of extra data attached to each map. So instead, I'll do a little bit of processing, and the only thing I really care about is really a true-false value in the form of a byte for each cell in the grid. So for var I equals 0, I is actually no, n equals buffer get size surface buffer I is less than n, I plus equals 4. This needs to go before the buffer is deleted, otherwise we will just have trying to use a buffer that does not exist error. The color value that we're going to look at is going to be var color is going to equal buffer poke. Actually, you know what? I can really just buffer read. That might be slightly more efficient. Pete over the size of the buffer, and then buffer read divided by 4 because we're doing 4-bit ints. Buffer read surface buffer. And the type is going to be buffer U32. So this is going to be an integer, a 32-bit integer, which contains the value of the color at any given position in the buffer. The only part that we really care about is the lower byte rather. the least significant 8 bits because that's where the red color information is. The red, green, and blue color information are all going to be the same because white is 255 on all 3 color channels, black is 0 on all 3 color channels. I'm only going to bother with the red because I don't need to calculate a bunch of redundant values. I'm going to bitwise AND this with 0 by FF. So 255 in decimal, FF in hex. And let us var collision data buffer is going to equal buffer create. And that's just going to be the size and width of the surface without being multiplied by 4. The type can be a buffer fixed, the alignment can be 1. Again, it really can be 4 because we're only going to be dealing with 4-bit, 32-bit rather, pieces of data, but I don't find that setting the alignment of a buffer in GameMaker really affects any performance. And sometimes if you forget that it's there, setting it to something else can cause issues that you don't expect. Anyway, we are going to buffer write into collision data buffer. The type is going to be buffer U8, and the value is just going to be color. So we're just going to be dealing with a bunch of 8-bit bytes for actual collision data. We're not going to be bothering with the entire 32-bit words. Technically, since each cell can only have a state that's either true or false, you really could compress it even farther than that. Each cell could really only be 1 bit, and it would therefore take up 1/32 of the size of the original surface buffer. And if you had, for example, a game window that was 1920 by 1080, you would have 1980 divided by 4 is 480, 1080 divided by 4 is 720. There are this many cells in that grid. Each cell is 1 bit. You could divide that by 8, and you could have the entire grid be You could have the entire grid only taking up 16 kilobytes. But since each cell in my case is going to be 8 bits, because I don't feel like dealing with a bunch of bytes, because I don't think it's actually going to really save anything, the entire collision grid is going to be 129 kilobytes instead. Okay. That is not Bombardier, that is the S-part demo. Next, I can say if buffer exists, fuse.collision, buffer delete, fuse.collision, fuse.collision is going to equal the collision data buffer. And that is going to set the collision data to what we just read out of this. I haven't written any code that actually uses this yet. The game still thinks it's a DS grid. I'll have to fix that in a minute. But if I were to run the game, if I were to go into editor mode, and if I were to go into collision painting mode, and if I were to exit collision painting mode, and wow, everything just disappeared. Yeah, I see that. Data structure with index does not exist. As I said, it's expecting a DS grid index and not a buffer. But let me go into here. It's going to crash again on load. If I were to go into F7 and if I were to draw some stuff, paint some area, maybe make it a little bigger, and leave, we are going to have the game crashing because we are attempting to read outside the buffer. Okay, how is that? I should be repeating buffer get size surface buffer divided by 4. Or just like, do I have to seek to the beginning? That buffer not divided by 4. Do I have to seek to the beginning? I was under the impression that buffer seek start offset of 0. I was under the impression that as soon as you create a buffer, as long as you don't read or write to it, then its tell is automatically 0 at the beginning. Let's try this again. Okay. So that didn't crash, which is good. If I were to hit F7 again, it would still be there. If I were to minimize the game window, it would be gone because the surfaces are volatile. Let's see. Write the collision surface data to a buffer. Next, I need to actually make use of this in some way, shape, or form. If I were to find all the places in code where this is referenced, I suppose I can start by going into DS grid clear, collision grid equals that. Buffer exists. Oh, you know what I can do? I can... Is this clear? That's I just committed. I can get rid of this code now because I think... I really don't need to noodle with this because we won't be generating any manual collision grids anymore. Okay, let me just delete that. The regular collision grid is still for stuff like towers. That's fine, but for static stuff, for static collision stuff, I want to be able to paint that myself. Okay. I'm just going to make that a commit as well. And we're not going to worry about that at all. So what I was looking for was when you load the data from a file. Yeah, the regular collision grid can stay. Fuse.collision probably doesn't want to be there. We're not going to be resizing you. We are not going to be reading you from JSON. Instead of making the fuse collision part of the JSON, I am probably going to just save that as a buffer that's just sitting in the where are my map files. Like make a third file called level1.collision or something, and I'm just going to suck that off the drive when I load maps, and I won't have to deal with converting anything from text to binary, because that would be slow. Okay. This I can also get rid of because this is the process where stuff is actually getting fused together. Add collision. I really wish I had done this at the beginning because I would have to spend a lot less time going back and changing things. Is add collision defined in the main entity class? Add collision? Yes, it is. Okay, that's what I thought that was. We're gonna get rid of this. Alright, and then the collision grid, the actual collision grid, that drama, that was so I could swap out the collision grid and, like, write to a different one while I was during the process of fusing the map, but it's really, really not important. Is that used anywhere else? I feel like I'm missing one usage of that. DS grid right. This is when you save it. I am no longer going to save that data. Okay, so that one can go away. Fuse.collision equals data buffer. That's the good one. Buffer delete fuse.collision. That's deleting the old collision buffer. I really could. Nah. Never mind. I was going to say I really could just recycle the same buffer over and over again, but it really doesn't matter. Collision grid fuse state is going to be checking here to see if the collision is free. Okay, I think that's everything. This has a bunch of uses that are for situations unrelated, right? Like when towers get added, yeah. The debug collision grid, when it's drawn, that may be... I may want to get rid of that. That may be something that I need to get rid of because that's basically the surface in F7 is basically a better version of that anyway. Okay. Good. OBS is still recording. I was slightly nervous that when I was mashing the function keys on my keyboard because I didn't know which function key I was supposed to press that I might have accidentally stopped OBS recording, but it does not appear that I did. So if I were to run the game now, and if I were to mess around with the collision painting system, it should work as intended, but nothing should still happen. One, I would like... Yeah, let's just draw some random stuff. I would like... Yeah, okay, good, nothing happens. The existing collision grid to get converted to a surface. And that is essentially going to be the opposite of what I did over... Where did I do it? That is essentially going to be the opposite of what I did over here. Now, instead of just surface clearing up here, when the collision surface is created, we are going to, like I said, essentially do the opposite. And buffer, let's see, var surface buffer is going to still be equal to this, the correct size. The collision data buffer we already have, that's fuse.collision. We are going to seek to the beginning like this. We are going to iterate over the collision data buffer instead of writing a U32, instead of reading a U32 rather, we are going to read a U8 out of the collision buffer, and then instead of writing a U8 into the surface buffer, we are going to write a U32, and it is going to be buffer. I mean not buffer. Make color RGB. Color on the red, color on the green, color on the blue. We don't need this bitwise and 255 here because that's just going to be the original number because we're only dealing with an 8-bit value. We don't need to AND it with another 8-bit value. But we do, however, need to bitwise OR this with 0x FF000000. That is going to be the alpha. So you combine that with make color RGB, and we are going to have a surface filled with pixels that are either black or white depending on the collision data, and it is going to be full alpha. Next, buffer delete surface buffer, we can do that. But first, before we do that, buffer set surface onto the collision surface, which is the one that we're going to be painting on. We are going to, no, we need the buffer first. Surface buffer, we're going to be using the collision surface, and the offset is going to be 0. And then we can delete surface buffer. We do not need to go through the whole song and dance of resetting the collision data buffer because we've kind of already, we don't need to do that. This is going the other way. And then we don't need to free the surface either. Were we freeing the surface? No, we're resetting the surface. We don't need to do that. Okay, this should allow any and all collision data that's already there to be loaded. So no errors popped up in the console, that's good. If I were to go into level 1, hit F7, the game is going to crash because collision data buffer is not set before reading it. Shouldn't it be? Oh no, that should be fuse.collision. Because that was the local variable that we were playing with up above. Okay. Let's use the correct buffer this time. I really hope this works. I don't want to have to sit here for any longer than I have been. This is turning out to be another video that's a bit on the longer size. Illegal buffer index -1. Okay. When a map is loaded... Alright, you know what? In that case... Knowing that all the maps are going to be the same size, we won't ever mess with this buffer. Create. The size can be room width divided by 4 times room height divided by 4. The type buffer fixed. The alignment 1. Okay, then... I guess we'll do what I said before, and instead of going through this whole song and dance, we're going to just recycle the same buffer over and over again, and we're not going to bother, for example, creating a new collision buffer. That should make the whole thing slightly more efficient, and it should also prevent issues with like references to buffers running off in the wrong direction and weird stuff like that. Okay. So, I am not drawing anything, it seems. Why am I not drawing anything? Why am I not able to draw anything? If I hit F7, we are crashing. Buffer seek start. I am really close to being done with this, I think, but I also... I am running a little late on time because there's been a couple issues that have taken longer than I expected them to. And I want to get this done now, but I don't know if that's, like, something that I should be doing with my time now. I'll see. I'll try to get this done. So first, why are we no longer painting on the surface? Okay, before I do anything else, let me make a commit. Let me say macro for field size rather than just using the room size. Then I can say convert the collision surface to and from a buffer correctly, I guess I might add. There is still the matter of, in here, something's not going right. And I ran out of time to finish doing this 2 days ago when I started, so I have to come back to this later. So there's a lot of fun and or / annoying things that can happen when you start dealing with surfaces in Alpha and Game Maker. I had to noodle around with this for a while, and I guess it's a little bit late in the video now because I've been going for a while. I might as well increase the font size. For whatever reason, Game Maker does not like it when I do this buffer read, buffer write, buffer set surface business with without clearing the surface first. I don't know if that's because it doesn't like allocate the space and memory until you actually do something with it. I know there's a little bit of weirdness in various ways when you do things with surfaces. Anyway, the rest of this should be the same as it was 2 days ago when I was recording the first part of this video. Getting the contents of the collision data, setting it to the surface, and then setting the surface to what you see on the screen now. So if I were to just draw with my mouse cursor a little bit and go like this and trace out to the area that I want you to be able to build on in tower defense ways, I will be able to do that. It'll also get saved if I leave, and I'm pretty sure I had this working in I'm pretty sure I had this working in the first half of this video, and this wasn't something that I added afterwards off recording. But if I were to leave the collision painting mode and resume the game, for example, and maybe minimize the game to destroy any volatile surfaces, and then go back, it will still be there because this when you leave collision painting mode, this the collision data that you painted out is saved to a buffer somewhere, which is non-volatile and will not evaporate when you minimize the game. The next step is to save this to a file when you save the map data. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I have to do as far as painting goes. I will like probably later tonight over the weekend or something, just paint all of the collision area on my own. Probably record that, probably speed it up, play music, throw it on at the end of the video, because I don't think anybody really wants to just watch me do that for a half hour. So, let's see, there is a save. I have caps lock on apparently, VKF1 to save. F11 is draw the collision. I'm gonna get rid of that because I don't think that's very useful anymore now that I have like the literal collision painting surface. VKF1 is this one, save map. Okay, save map right here. So I believe I got rid of the code that saves the collision grid. I don't think that's still here anymore, right? Yeah, I don't see that here anymore. Also, first, let me make a commit. Collision surface works properly now. So I think to do that, I haven't really been doing this in this tower defense series. Sometimes what I do when I want to just like bookmark a line of code is create a breakpoint on it, and that way it'll appear in the breakpoints window down at the bottom. I believe Game Maker actually has like a bookmark feature so you can actually bookmark lines of code built in, but I cannot remember what the hotkey is, and in any case, F9 doesn't get much easier than that. Let's see, the fused collision buffer is what I'm looking for. Now you see if I right click and say go to code, I can just jump back to this bookmark. Of course, if I actually run this into bug mode, the game will pause when it gets to this line, so maybe I better deactivate it. Let's see, if fuse.raw not equal to undefined if... Actually, the collision buffer won't ever be deleted, will it? So I can just buffer save fuse.collision file name change extension. How about to collision? What is that hotkey that I keep hitting that opens up the start page? Recently in a GameMaker update, and I don't think I have that update installed now. I want to say it's in one of the beta ones, which I have not bothered to install yet. GameMaker added the ability to rebind IDE hotkeys, and that would be really nice because I would like to turn off whatever hotkey keeps letting me do that. Anyway. Yeah, it was just fuse.collision. So I can buffer save this entire thing, and that should save just a binary file containing this information. And it'll be a few kilobytes. When I load it in load map, if file exists, we'll be doing the same thing, but with the extension, what did I call it? Collision. We'll basically be doing the same thing. If buffer exists, fuse.collision. Buffer delete fuse.collision, and fuse.collision is going to equal buffer load. The file name is just going to be this, and this will allow us to save and load I need the file name function for this. This is just going to allow us to save and load said collision data. Let me just test this out. So I'm not going to paint collision area super carefully on the campsite. I'm just going to maybe like outline a little bit of area here and say you can build here. And later on, I will maybe not go over the path so much that way. In a minute later on, I will save this. F1 to save. This can be level 1.bug. Does this still have like a bunch of because this file is huge. Does this still have a bunch of like individual object JSON in it or something? I don't know. Anyway, we can save that. We can go back to F7. That's still there. If I were to rerun the game, hopefully nothing bad is going to pop up in the console, and hopefully I can just load everything just fine as we had before. Okay, excellent. Got saved and loaded. Let me look at this project in Windows Explorer, and let me look at the data files. Maps and level 1.bug is not 1.5 megabytes. I don't know why it was showing that. Why the original one was. Anyway, unless that was just the DS grid collision data. How long did that take to load? Because that should have taken much faster to load than I don't seem to be timing it. I seem to remember that loading this with the DS grid, and when we were like deserializing the DS grid, I seem to remember that took a good second or so to load because the game had to process all that data. Anyway, I should probably commit this. This can be. I won't commit changes to the map files now, but save and load collision area. So let's see. The next thing that I need to do is to actually make that useful for anything. And there is a method in the game struct that is something to the effect of collision free, and this used to use the DS grid functions to figure out if you could build anything in a particular location. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to need to actually loop over the particular cells in the buffer to figure out if I can or not. So I'm going to let's see. Instead of doing this, I'm going to initialize var collision grid fused state to actually, you know what? We can do a bit of like short circuit evaluations here. So instead, if this is the dynamic collision area, this is like the area where towers are built and stuff like that. So if a tower is already built in the area which you are trying to build on, this is automatically going to return false, and we don't need to do any like saving the state, and we don't have to basically, if there's already something there, we don't have to bother checking to see if there's a tree there or not. And at the end, we can just return true, because if none of the conditions that would have this return false are satisfied, then we know that there's space available, we can build there. Now instead, let's see, for var I equals 0, no, actually I is going to equal cell x min, I is less than or equal to cell x max, I plus plus. I don't even know what that is. For var j equals cell y min, j is less than or equal to cell y max, j plus plus. We can just loop over the section of we can just loop over the section of the buffer that is occupied by these cells. First, I need to remember, I want to say this is a column major. I want to say that if you save a surface to a buffer, it'll go like x, like the pixels that are saved will be in the order of like 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, and then the next row it'll loop around 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, and so on. And in that case, I will say var addr, the address is going to be j multiplied by, divided by cell size. Let's see, j times field width div cell size plus grid cell size? Grid cell size plus I is going to be the address. Each of these, each of the cells are 1 byte in memory. I can say if buffer peak fuse collision. The offset is going to be the address, and the type is going to be buffer u8. If the value in here is true of some sort, then we can return false, because that means that, actually, is it the other way around? Is a true value in the buffer solid or not solid? I don't remember. I'll find out in a minute when I run this. Let's see. Let me try and plop down a pebble shooter, and I can build... Seems like we're still using the old collision data. Add environment entity collision. This solid property is kind of probably not useful anymore. Yeah, okay, this is like, that was a dumb hack, so that like flower objects would not be marked as solid because their area wasn't big enough, whereas like tree objects would be marked as solid because their area was big enough. I'm not gonna have that. I'm pretty sure the collision bounding box for all of these things, all like model data, is also not needed anymore, because I will not be doing anything with the collision on individual models. With that said, I also don't need to go through all of this, because this like bounding box minimum and maximum is only... Oh, you know what? No, I do still need that for figuring out if I can click on an object in the editor. Never mind. Okay. Let's not remove that. That would have been a big problem. This is where things such as documenting your code comes in helpful. And also, we have the infinity keyword. We might as well use it. I don't remember if I was aware of the infinity value when I first started making this, or if I just didn't think of it, or if maybe there was another reason I didn't use it, but when evaluating minimum and maximum, it's usually a better idea to initialize values to actual infinity instead of something arbitrarily large. Yeah, the solid property, though, we definitely don't need. I can just get rid of all this. The game should run perfectly fine without it. I don't need to do this check over here. Add collision is still useful for towers. It's just not exactly useful for anything else. Let's see. Bullets add collision is pretty much overwritten, because I don't know why it would ever be called, but just in case it is called, let's see. This is the path node constructor. Game.collision grid. I don't think that's used either, is it? Oh, that's the like the tower version. Pretty sure I do not need anything to do with this. And path nodes are not entities, but they do They do take up space, at least as far as the editor is concerned, but just not in the world. Let's see, if I cannot any longer click on the path nodes because they have no collision data, I think when you click on them in the editor, it just loops over every path node and does the ab check on the against array. But let me go back to removing any unneeded references to this. I can probably just initialize entities, add collision to an empty function, and just like override the towers version. Like this. And that way I don't have to bother with like replacing it with an empty method there or replacing it with an empty method. That's the base class here. Shut up, phone. In fact, I don't think path node needs it at all because it's not called anywhere on a path node. Okay, I've deleted a lot of code. Let me see if this still works. It should all still work. Much of this GitHub commit is going to be red, except for this method there. There's a lot of stuff that I no longer need to do because I am no longer doing like evaluating whether or not you can build something in a stupid way. All right, first, let me just make sure that nothing outright crashes. All right, cool. If I were to place it down, I'm pretty much unrestricted in where I can place these towers down. Okay, which tells me that the collision-free method is probably not calculating anything the way it's supposed to. No, there is some invalid space out here. Why is that? It looks really weird from the top-down view when you have a tower selected and it's glowing like that. I want to replace it with something else eventually. I'm thinking I'm probably going to replace it with something like an outline effect rather than glow because this looks rather like programmer arty, and I don't want to keep it like that. There's a few ways I can do that. Yeah, it's definitely not in the right place though. Alright, hang on. First, let me commit this. I'm going to remove much of the old collision system. I also said that I would remove VKF11 drawing the debug grid, the debug collision grid. I also don't need that function like at all anymore. And I can pretty safely get rid of that without breaking anything because it's never going to be called anyway, and even if it was, it would probably not work correctly anymore. F11, yeah, don't try to draw the debug grid. Let's see, I am initializing the collision grid to the correct size, aren't I? That just feels like the sort of thing I should check because for some reason I feel like I might have hard-coded, yeah, field width divided by 4. This should be grid cell size. It's going to be 4 anyway. This won't affect the this won't affect like the size of anything, but just in case I decide to change the resolution of the collision grid, I should do that now. Any other places where I might be trying to divide by 4? Yeah, here. Divided by grid cell size. Alright. For some reason, I don't know why I didn't do that. I feel like I thought there should be a macro when I was doing this 2 days ago, and I just like didn't actually check to see if there was. I don't know what my past self was thinking, but anyway. Let me try and take a closer look at what's going on here. So if I were to like build here, let me go back to my old idea of using like printout statements here, and that way we can see which of these conditions is triggering the game to think that I can't build a tower on this random piece of land Terrain paint said no. Okay. Here it's fine. Do not know why I clicked that button. Oops, that is code for another game. Over here, if we're outside the grid, terrain, something already built here, that's fine. I should probably just, like, if you're outside the grid, just, like, return without even doing this. I feel like that's, like, because I think this will return undefined if you try to look up a value outside the grid, and on certain platforms it may, like, not even work at all. So if xmin is less than 0, or ymin is less than 0, or xmax is greater than, what is it? Field size? What was it? Field width. Field width, or y max is greater than field width. And that really should be a greater than or equals to. Like that. Show debug message, out of bounds. Particularly, there is a function called Gmail release mode, which I have not talked about at any point ever, but it removes some extra, like, debug checks for your game, and I believe one of them is, yeah, we're out of bounds here, we're being marked as out of bounds. I believe one of them is if you try to read or write data that is out of the bounds of a grid, it won't bother, like, showing a nice error, it'll just crash. Which is, if I do that for a final build, which I probably will, because, I mean, theoretically the game has been tested and doesn't need any of that information in the final build, that could potentially cause problems. Anyway, so the problem is that the terrain paint said no, which is a weird thing to write, and an even weirder thing to say out loud. First, let's commit that change. Next, I guess one of the things that I am allowed to do is go open up level 1.collision in a hex editor. And this is, where is HXD? It's a nicer hex editor than the one that I used to use, which was a rather, well, it was kind of a pain. Let's just say that. Let me just scroll down here, and there's a bunch of 255s in a row, which do indicate that something is solid in one of these cells. This is, let's see, what's the offset? 3B55 to decimal. What is 3B55 to decimal? Oh, you know what I think it is? Since this is doing integer division rounding down, what it should be doing is rounding up, and it may be the case that each of those little, like, off by 1 errors just add up over the course of like 44 rows or whatever it is. Let me try this. All right, please. So it's backwards. I cannot build in the like the triangle that I painted, but I can build anywhere outside it. Okay, good. That's what the problem was. Off by 1 errors. Gotta love them. For example, I can build. I'm just gonna spam a bunch of these. I can build, like, outside the perimeter of this thing. But I can't, if I were to pause the game, go into here, like, I can build outside the edge of this thing, but I can't build inside it. So I just need to throw a little knot in front of that. And alright, I think we can be on our way. That is the bug solved with this. Correct. Now I do just want to make sure that since I have been messing with stuff being added to the collision grid, and I don't think this is going to be a problem, but it's the sort of thing that'll be awkward if I'm wrong. Let me go into edit mode. Let me F2 to go click on the path nodes, and indeed, we can still click on the path nodes. And every time I do save, the last path node is getting deleted. All right, I did write that down on my bug board, right? To fix. Most likely, the next one of these videos that I do is going to be taking on stuff on the bug board. That is not the bug board. Bombardier. It's the same general part of the screen, and I just clicked on it without actually reading. This is a pretty like high priority item because it's important, but it's also probably like not going to be a difficult fix at all. Matt should be immune to magnifying glass. Player should be able to play around with the screen. Did I not write this down? All right. Alright, not sure how that happened because unless I'm like going from I equals 0 to I is less than the length of the list of path nodes minus 1 or something like that. I don't know how that would have happened. Speaking of things on this bug board, this whole thing, collision, instead of trying to figure out where collision objects are when you place them in the editor, create a separate editor mode that lets you paint collision area on the surface of the map and use that instead. That is officially finished because that is what I did in this video. So that whole major thing is done. Otherwise, let's see. I'm going to exit this. I'm just going to spawn something like in the middle here. And can I mouse over this to click on it? I can, awkwardly, but I can. Good. So I didn't break anything in that department. So I'm going to stop now. I'm not going to create a release for this week's work like right now on video, as I sometimes have been doing, because I do still want to later tonight, when I've just got like time to waste or something like that. I do still want to, on my own time, I will paint the collision area for the rest of the maps correctly, so that you don't have to sit here for a half hour watching me do it, and you can just watch the montage or something, or the speed up or whatever. But my name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. If you do want the code for this, all the same, link in the video description. Next week is going to be fixing bugs. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute towards these videos being made, there will be links to that in all the usual places. Otherwise, I try to post about 2 game dev videos a week, 1 of these and 1 tutorial, doing a lot of 3D collision stuff again these days. I hope you all found this interesting, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Connor, Edward Holt, Emily Koyo, Halo Factory, Posho, Sindra Larson, Tusk, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want to see your name in the credits or hear yourself shouted out at the end, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.